Welcome to We Should Be Working. I'm Zach Hendricks. With me, as always, is Jeff. Jeff, good to talk to you. I'm happy to see you again. How has your week been?
Hey Zach, good to see you. Well, the week's been pretty low key, just keeping it simple. How about you?
It was a busy week, busy, crazy, and I should have been working on a lot of stuff, but I guess technically I was. Had a lot of stuff going on with my hockey team that I coach, but won't get into too specifics. But it was exhausting. But hockey is almost over and done, even though I love it. It's been a long season, and I think I've got one, maybe two more weeks left, and then I'm all done with that, and then I'm really going to be sitting on my butt. So I'm not looking forward to that. So
Yeah, I wanted to ask you. So you got this hockey thing going on, but like, okay, so you had your last week of work last week, right? On our
yep.
last episode, we talked about it was your last day. So where have you come since then? Have you been going on interviews, doing your resume, or
So I
avoiding all of
did. I
that?
did start working on resumes. I find every single time, maybe because I'm too much of a perfectionist, that I will go. Speaking of perfectionist, this is going to be some nice live fix. I'm sitting here, and you can see this guitar and then this guitar, and I'm like looking at my camera, and the camera is not level. So let's get this little dude here. See how level I am. Yeah, way off. Sorry, folks. There we go. Way better. So I started working on multiple resumes. I see a job and I'm like, oh, they want a little bit of this. And then, oh, this job wants a little bit more motion graphics. Oh, this one wants a little bit of that. And then every single time I have to go in and tweak it. And I'm finding myself spending like 2 to 3 hours to apply for like 2 to 3 jobs. And I'm like, I just don't. And then you'll go and you get the auto reject and you're like, well, of course, because this job has been posted for more than a week and they've got 300 applicants on this job. And you're like, what am I even putting in for? And so it's weird. You keep hearing about how the economy is doing good, and everybody's this and there's tons of jobs, but I have the feeling that for people like me and you, at least for me, what I'm finding is that non-entry level people, there's not a lot of jobs out there. And a lot of what they're asking for is one very specific thing. So I found one job that I was like, oh man, I'd be great at this. This is actually a company that I've worked with before. I still know a couple people here. This would be great. And I check all the boxes except one. And I'm like, well, that's a pretty big box to not check. And they're like, requirement, fluent in Apple coding languages and Android coding languages. And I'm like, well, I've never done that. But it's like everybody wants you to be such a generalist these days that they're like, do you know graphic design? Do you know motion graphics? Do you know how to film? Can you publish this? Have you worked in communications? And do you code? Do you know CSS? Do you know HTML? And I'm like, you're looking for a unicorn here. Like you're never going to be able to check all of these boxes. And if you do, they're probably not going to be good at any of these things.
Yeah, it makes me wonder who is this person that they're hiring? Like, well, the person that actually gets the job, like, are they some talented wizard or something?
Exactly. Well, and it makes me wonder again, it comes back to brought up last week that we should really talk about sometime. I've been talking with a lot of my friends about is what is the state of creative going to be in 2 to 5 years with everything that's happening with AI? I don't know if you saw what happened with the new render engine, or the new AI. I think it's called Sonoma or Sona, the video AI generating. It's a Gen
Oh, it's
AI called
Sora,
Sora. Yeah, yeah, Sora.
OpenAI's video. Yeah.
It's unbelievable what the stuff that they released. I mean, it's
Yeah.
just unreal. I couldn't believe it. And I was like, okay, this whole industry is going to change here soon. And me and one of my buddies were saying how some way it was really, really cool because we're like, man, imagine the movies that we're going to be able to spit out in like 3 days. That I can just go do this scene, do this scene, do this scene, do this scene, and it's just there and it looks realistic. I'm like, we can just crank a movie out. So in some ways, it really speaks to like the young video creative to me, where it's like we've got our handy cam and no budget, and I'm like, now we can make high budget films, in our rooms with our buddies and all of this, and really make our imagination come to life. At the same time, I'm like, Zach is a video creator. I'm like, well, my job's going to be done here soon. They're really not going to need me in the same ways that they did before. And so I really think, I don't think you'll ever get rid of video or creative altogether, but I'm, I really think it's going to go the way of people like Christopher Nolan, where he's using IMAX film and nobody else is. He uses it well, it's not gone, but nobody else is doing that. Like film is pretty much dead, for lack of a better term. I really believe that nobody shoots on film anymore. Some people do, but the business of film in the 90s versus the business of film now is pretty much gone. And so I'm really, really curious about where this industry is going to go. What
Yeah.
were your reactions when you saw that Sora thing?
Well, I was kind of like, okay, well, this is expected. It's a matter of time before they came out with something like that. Um, you can't really use it yet, right? No, it's not open to the public. It's just they just showed some examples from their in-house team of, so it's like we really don't know what it's going to be like, but we've seen what happened with Midjourney and Dolly 3 and stuff. So
Oh,
it's like, okay, that's been out for a year. Everyone's had their hands on it. I haven't really seen anybody really make good use of it other than showing you what it can do as like potential. So the only thing it's really created is a cottage industry of AI influencer types who are using this software and showing other people how to use it and making cool stuff with it as like an example. And they're getting followings off of, Twitter, and so there's like a whole cottage industry of like AI news and development. But I don't know exactly what people are doing with a lot of this stuff. I know that a lot of people hate it and don't like it, and it's fucking with a lot of artists, and the whole copyright thing that it's like it's trained on a bunch of data from actual artists' work. And I've tried using it myself, but I feel like I end up wasting a lot of time, like just with the possibility that greatness is just on the other end of another round of of prompts, and I can never get it quite right. But as far as like, I feel like it's good for stock. Like, okay, I just need like a header
yeah.
image for this blog post. All right, I could go to Unsplash, or I can just type in what I want to see, and it's just like a background thing. That's fine. That's fine with me. But as far as video is concerned, I feel like it's probably going to, if it does anything that Midjourney's doing, or the democratization of how social media has allowed everybody to post stuff and to share stuff and to write and to make videos. We thought that it was going to revolutionize and give everybody a chance to be like a writer, a self-published author, or a video content creator, but it's kind of created this weird creator economy where everyone's sort of forced to do that stuff to try to make a living. And there's so much competition. And so no one's getting seen unless you hit the algorithm. So yes, we can have the ability to create a movie in your pocket in 3 to 5 years. Who knows? Like, I want to see a movie about XYZ character doing this, and like I can have my own personal video. But if everybody's doing that, it's going to be so saturated. And in order to get your stuff seen, it's got to suit whatever algorithm is going to push it out to people, or you have to market it or whatever. And I don't know, it's probably just going to go the way of the lowest common denominator, outrage stuff, fake news, like weird BS,
I was going
trickery.
to say that's where if I look at the very paranoid side of my brain and cynical part of my brain, is that the part where I get afraid of AI is when it's linked with Gen AI with like a TikTok algorithm, meaning, or like a Netflix algorithm type of a thing. But I think TikToks is probably, I'm not much of a TikTok user, but seems to be the most famous one right now as far as curating content. But if you link those two together and you plug that into Netflix, I can easily be watching shows that are only made for me, that you don't
Yeah.
ever see. It's generating content in TV shows and movies just based off of what I like to see and what I want. And then you add that in and add another step, and you start talking about news and all of that. And it's curating news content and stuff that's happening in the world that is not even real. And you can get so far into a bubble that it's like that's the part where it really starts getting scary with me, is that if the AI starts running generative AI as well, like right now, all of generative AI is being run by human beings. But if you
Hmm.
plug an algorithm into that and it starts making its own content on its own, that's when it starts getting really freaky to me. And, people, start have posted, they start having conversations with AIs and stuff like that. And, it really does remind me of a lot of different movies. And it's kind of curious as far as which one you're going to get. Do you end up
Right.
with a Matrix? Do you end up with the movie Her? Do you end up with the movie Wall-E type of a
Exactly.
thing? And I really feel like there's probably going to be a mix of those. Like, I just saw a meme sent out that I thought was great. What it was, in the 90s, it's two different pictures, and it says, in the 90s, what we thought AI was going to be, and it's Terminator and all the robots, and they're, killing human beings and all of this. It's that, apocalyptic future of the machine apocalypse and all of that. And they go, what we're actually doing with it. And it's a Gen AI post picture of like Jennifer Lawrence, Scarlett Johansson, Megan Fox, and these just like hot chicks in dresses. And it's like, here's what we're actually doing with it though. Like, and I'm like, well, yeah, that's
Gross.
true. It's like eventually it's gonna get sexualized and all of that. And they go, the robots are in it for the long game. They know people will just succumb to this, and it'll
Oh, I
just
know.
basically just be another form of pornography type of a thing.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
like,
that's happening too, and not a big surprise.
yeah,
But
exactly. In some ways it's hilarious, and then in other ways, like I said, it's a bit terrifying. And so, I mean, when you've played around with any of this AI, I've messed around with some Dolly, some ChatGPT, of course, and a few other things, and then obviously seen the Sora. Do you have you gone down that rabbit hole? Because I know myself, I haven't. That's where I was kind of like, yeah, stock images, stock footage for video, I think is kind of going to be gone here soon. Especially with the stuff from Sora, where I'm like, yeah, stock image, stock photography and photos and image sequences and video is pretty much gone here in the next few years. Movies might take longer and TV shows. But do you have any like fun inspiration with any of that? Is there like, oh, this is cool. I'm doing like, like I found myself one time doing crazy cats with sunglasses and stuff.
yeah, I went through a period where I was experimenting with Midjourney for a while. I paid for a subscription to get more credits out of the thing, and I was trying to generate a header image for my homepage on my website. I was in the middle of trying to redesign it, and I was trying to get like some Frank Frazetta inspired 70s fantasy art with, and so I was having fun experimenting with that, trying to create that look of like a paperback book from, 70s paperback book. And I was getting some interesting results, but like I couldn't get the same results other people were getting with it, I was seeing on Reddit or something. And I was having fun with that. And then so I did actually use it for Christmas gifts this year. Instead of like, I printed someone a card, but instead of a card, like an e-card or whatever, I generated like some inside jokes, like in a character. So like my girlfriend's mom, we like to think of her as a bumblebee, and she likes coffee, and so and they like to think of me as a sloth. So I just generated an image of a bumblebee and a sloth sitting down for a cozy cup of Christmas coffee, and so like I had the image, and when I printed it out, like her mom was like blown away, like, where did you get this? And it's like, well, yeah, I generated it, based off of my text. But so she was like impressed with the thought that I put into it. Like I thought of her and us this way to create this idea that we can now see. So that is where I feel like it's useful and it's impressionable. Like I think people of all ages can do that. Like I just want to see this idea in a visual form. There it is. Okay, great. But if you have anything specific that you're trying to do, I mean, it's super annoying. I find myself
Tough
generating and
to
generating and
tweak.
generating. 6 hours go by,
Yeah.
and I'm like frustrated. And I've got like 100 different images I've generated, but nothing's quite what I'm looking for. And then I'm like, why don't I just make it from scratch like I used to? I don't know. I'm just trying to get used to all these AI
Yeah.
tools, and like my other skills of actually being able to draw and build
Got the
this stuff
rules
are like
on.
diminishing slowly over time as I'm just getting more used to prompting and trying to develop this right skills to get the AI to do what I want. And then I've got to buy more credits because whoops, I ran out. So now I'm just like sucked into this weird subscription process with these guys, and it's like enough. Like I don't want to have to do this. It's annoying. It's not that fun. After a while, it's fun in the beginning, and then I just feel like it gets really annoying after a while.
Yeah, I can get down
It's
there.
not
I mean, I know
interesting.
I had a couple times where it was just like I remember I was really, really close to what I was looking for, and then it had an image with this woman with glasses, but her glasses were not drawn well. It was kind of like the problem with the fingers. It was like half on or
Yeah.
half off, or it was going into her head. And so I did, woman not wearing glasses. And then all I get is women wearing glasses. And I'm like, no, not wearing glasses. Like I'm trying to get, office worker woman sitting in chair, desk, and then everything I'm getting is like messed up and screwed up and it keeps getting like progressively worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. So I
Hmm.
think like if they can start spitting out, and I think it'll get there eventually. It's not that hard to do. I mean, even illustrators had live trace for a long time, but you start spitting out a vector file with handles and stuff like that, that then you're like, oh, okay, well, that's close enough. I'll go and tweak that, change this color, do all of that. Bing, I'm done.
Right. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I think that'll eventually get us there. So that did make me think, as far as this is kind of a new tool, a new renaissance for us, where we've got that these ideas in our head, and finally we have a tool to be able to get it out that is not a ridiculous amount of money, where before we needed tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars to get our idea to come to life, or we didn't know how to do it, and hence that's why we were at school. When you were at school, was that kind of still a time of inspiration for you? Like, was it fun to see all of your ideas to be able to come to life, or were you still struggling with, I'm not being able to get these ideas where I want them to?
Yeah, I think it was tough at school because, well, if, you just start off as an artist who draws, and now I'm using digital tools to try to create this cool stuff. But the stuff that I was inspired by, as far as video games and movies, I'm creating a shitty model in 3D Studio Max, and it looks absolutely nothing like what I see on TV. I'm stuck with this like crappy, poorly rendered, designed a 3D structure that absolutely looks amateur at best. And it takes a while, a long time, like a lot of practice to get anything remotely close to what you see on TV as far as animated films or special effects. I just don't think that nobody in my art school, even the best of the best on the graduating class, produced anything that looked what you could see on TV and movies or video games. It just was a pale comparison. And it was like, do we just not have the software that other people have that makes their stuff look realistic and good? Or are we just playing with tools that are 5 years out of date? I don't know. It just kind of sucks. So that was another thing that made me feel like 3D wasn't really for me, is because the best I could do was make something that looked like a crappy infomercial for local TV, with like a poorly
Yeah.
animated character, derping around. It's
Or like a number
yeah.
five that just comes in and spins or something like that, and the lighting is
Oh
super
yeah.
harsh, and yeah.
Okay, doing like text or something like that, that's fine. Doing 3D extruded text, that's cool. But if I had to do a person or anything realistic or do a scene, I mean, it was not really fun to design something and then be like, okay, this isn't even close to what I could think I'd do. But yet you spent weeks and weeks and weeks doing it.
Yeah.
So I'm
In
like, I just want to do
retrospect,
graphic design.
yeah, in retrospect, do you think it was a lack of knowledge from teachers? Because I feel like, especially in 3D, if you don't know how to make it realistic, it was almost like for me in 3D, when somebody told me that you do this in 3D the exact way that you would do it in real life. And you have to simulate real life. And the thing that you don't realize is that it's like, I remember somebody told me, like, whenever you build a shape, all of the edges are harsh. It comes to an exact 90-degree angle. So all of your primitives, like a square or something like that, if you have an edge, it comes to an exact edge. But when you
Hmm.
look around, even everything that you see that you think has a sharp edge actually has a little bit of a curve on it. Just a
Right.
tiny little curve, and that's what catches that light and makes that look a little bit more realistic. So it's like every single thing you work on, you should have a slight rounded edge on it, just ever so much, unless it's maybe like a knife or a razor blade type of thing. Then maybe you're coming to a point where you're like, oh yeah, you're right. This is why your desk doesn't look right. It's because you don't have that slight rounded edges, the keys on your keyboard,
Hmm.
stuff like this. And you really kind of need that lesson from an instructor to then talk about, well, here's how it works in the real world, and this is why yours doesn't work. It was that mindset that I was like, okay, now I know why it's not there. It's because my lighting isn't good. It's not because of lack of the program or anything like that. So was it anything as far as lack of understanding from teachers, do you think, or just a lack of like we didn't have enough time, we didn't have enough capabilities, and it was art school. Like you got to develop those skills over years.
Yeah, I mean, I think the teachers did a fine job of, they told us about the chamfered edges too, that was
Yeah,
good. And a lot of working in 3D is really, like you said, understanding how real life works, how lighting actually works, how things bounce off each other. And, so it wasn't for lack of understanding. I just think it's a lot to take in. And when
yeah.
you start to get into it, you just are quickly hit with the realization that you are so far away from being able to do that. And that's why maybe I just didn't have the patience for it.
Maybe because so did you find that when you got to school, was it with a lot of students? Was it somewhat inspiring to be around other art students and things along those lines? Or did you find other people kind of quickly came to the realization that you did that you're like, I'm not quite able to get what I want out of this, and maybe I'm much more of a graphic designer?
Yeah, I think it was fun and inspiring to be around other artists. And, it's nice to have other people in your cohort that are doing the same thing, that are at a similar level as you. Because, I could produce something that doesn't really look very good, but I'm still like doing a good job in the class. Like the teacher's still giving me an A because I did the assignment and I'm at the level, at the expected, skill level for where I'm at. So, and you can see other students in the class doing something similar. So you kind of see how you stack up and you're like, okay, I'm not like really far behind. Now, obviously, if you're comparing yourself to what you see on TV, then you're like, oh, I'm so far behind,
Yeah.
so that would totally kill any of the inspiration, which, makes me think about today, how a lot of people are learning on YouTube and trying to figure things out through tutorials, and their level of comparison is just the internet, and it's like the best of the best. And they're like, where do I stack up? I feel like I suck. I can't do this. There's nobody at your level that you're seeing doing the actual grunt work of producing it every single day. You don't see that. So it's discouraging online. But back in college, it was fun because you're like, oh, hey, we're all doing this together. We all kind of suck. But like, hey, good job. You did that. And then this kid needs some help. So he's asking me for some tips. And I'm giving him some tips. And, the teacher's grading it. You get a good grade. You feel like you're progressing. That was all good. But
Well, I think that's some of the best advice out there. And, not that what we've been talking about has been creative focus and here's how to make it in a business, but I do think that that's some of the best advice is, especially as somebody that was mostly self-taught in 3D. I was one of those people that learned mostly off of tutorials and stuff like that, but I had one friend helping me. I had
mhm.
one person that knew what he was doing that was a few steps ahead of me. And I would encourage anybody that is learning or being self-taught, try to find somebody out there, whether they're an expert or not, to let you know, yep, you're doing this right. No, try it this way, but can at least encourage you because I know it was really intimidating for me the first time I put a demo reel out there that I was like, this thing sucks. But it's like I'm looking at, agencies like The Mill and Buck and stuff like this that are like some of the
Mhm.
best in the world. And I'm like, my stuff sucks compared to them. And of course, starting out, it's going to, but to have somebody be like, no, this is good, or maybe put something in like this, it's one of the best things. And that was one thing for me at art school that I got out of it was all of a sudden I had all of this camaraderie of like, man, everywhere I go, everybody's an artist and maybe in
Mhm.
a different discipline, but we're all kind of here trying to make it in this weird industry. So when you were at school, did they have dorms for Art Institute? Did you live in the dorms at all, or
Well, they had dorms they shared some dorms with Point Park College, I think, but I didn't live there. I lived in another student-sponsored housing apartment complex that was like a half an hour walk away. Um, but then I just lived in apartments with a bunch of roommates, like scattered across Pittsburgh, different areas. They didn't have real. I don't know. They had dorms, but I don't remember anybody who stayed in them. They weren't the Art Institute dorms. They were just like
were any of the people
kind
that
of there.
live that you were living with, were any of them artists or going to art school or anything like that?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Everybody that I was living with was also students at the same school,
Oh,
and
okay, that's
I
great.
remember we would be in like our living room with 5 desks and giant CRT monitors. Everybody was like working on their animation. It was crazy.
That's the greatest thing for me. I mean, I think the weird thing for me that was great about art school as well, it was weird to go to a place to go for all of the artists, especially, it kind of didn't really matter the discipline because school I went to, they had, sculpture, photography, acting, film, painting, drawing. It was just whatever. But pretty much the only people that went to the school were art students, even though it was a liberal arts, it was actually a liberal arts education. I think we had two science majors there, and I don't know what they were doing there. But
Mm-hmm.
everybody was an artist. But as a filmmaker, it was really handy because you're like, I have my actors here. You grab some theater kids and go, hey, do you want to come act in this? They're like, absolutely. Like, we're dying to do anything. And you're like, I need help with storyboarding. You're like, grab somebody that's in painting or in drawing. Like, hey, could you help me draw out some storyboards and do all this? That was one of my favorite things about it from an art perspective is that everything I needed was right there. And so some of the friendships, it was like such a great melting pot that everybody just wanted to work. And no, and people didn't care about getting paid and all that. It was just part of being at school. And oh, I want to be a part of his project, and I'll be a part of yours. Did you have any of that camaraderie or any mixing around as far as like students helping each other out? Or was that some of the first time that you got to work with other people?
Yeah, that's a good point. I had forgotten about that. I mean, it really did have some of that. Being in my apartment where we had graphic design majors, web design majors, culinary people, and everybody's kind of doing their own thing. But the best part about it was having people with a lot of time looking for projects to work on, things to do, and with a lot of creative ambition. They have not been burned out or jaded by the industry, so they're all excited about like making stuff. And even my friends at different colleges, had I was still connecting with them, and they were similar. It was like we were putting our skills together. It's just having all those creative people in like one room or one area to combine. It's like people are forced to work with each other. The access is just right there.
Yeah, I mean, I think that in today's day and age, the best that I've been able to come up with is that, I've heard both sides of it, and there's been one or two people that I've kind of mentored a little bit or have asked me for advice as far as going to school and all of this. And, like, man, I don't think I want to go to school. Can I still hack it in this industry? And it's like, actually, the creative arts is one of the best industries to not go to school in. Like, nobody really cares. All they care about is your work, for the most part. If you have good work and you have a good portfolio, they don't necessarily care that much if you went to college or not, or do you have your degree or master's. That's much more of a corporate thing.
Yeah.
Getting your foot in the door is much more, do you have good work? But also, college is one of the best places. That's my only regret with leaving early is that college is one of the best places to experiment, where you don't have these guidelines. You don't have a client hounding over you. You can kind of make what you want to do, make your mistakes, figure out how to do it, learn somebody else's perspective before you get spat out on your own. Is that I wish I
Hmm.
would have utilized that experimentation a little bit more. If I would have stayed a little bit longer, that might have been an opportunity there. But because I think the thing that I
Yeah.
missed most about leaving college was leaving all the other people behind, is that I was like, man, I really wanted to work with them. I really wanted to work with them. Did you maintain any of your relationships, or did you have any thoughts like that where it's like, hey, this is our good time to experiment, stuff like that, and then maintain any of those relationships afterwards?
Kind of. I mean, I had a really good relationship with my roommate who stayed with me from the very beginning all the way to the end until he graduated. He graduated a year before me, but I still stayed in touch with him for a while. Everybody else, not so much. I kind of feel like in my particular case, I went to school for like 4 days a week, and then I left and I went home back to Ohio for the weekend, so I could work at McDonald's and hang out with my girlfriend, who was like my high school girlfriend, and so I didn't have the same college experience that like other people did, where they stayed there on the weekends and they got to party and hang out with each other. I
Yeah.
didn't party. I tried to cram in all of my work into 4 days and then try to get it done, so then I can go home on the weekend. And because of that, I wasn't as attached to my classmates as I could have been.
Yeah. So you said that you guys were all sitting around there with computer CRT. Did you
Yeah.
buy a computer? Did you save up enough money to get yourself a computer? Because I was going to say, for me, when I was at college, computers were like such a commodity. Like we had maybe three computers on my dorm floor of like kids that owned computers. And if
Really?
they weren't available, then you had to go to the library or the media lab or something like that to go use one of theirs. But you were just hoping that your buddy's computer was available so you could go type your paper up or go edit a video real quick. Like, so did you bring your own?
Oh yeah, I mean
Oh,
my
awesome.
friends and I were into like the PC building hobby. So they were going to school for IT. Some of my high school friends were going to school for IT, and then I went to art school. But they knew how to like build computers, and I was like kind of nerding out about that too. They taught me how to build one, and so through that I built my own PC. And but I didn't. Everybody in my house had computers, so it wasn't hard to come by at all for us. But we were there from what 2000. So I don't know when did you go to school? What was it like for you? How come nobody had
For me,
computers?
yeah, I graduated 99, so I think I was just 1 year ahead of you.
Hmm.
But yeah, it was that still that 99 2000 era where yeah, people building their own PCs was just starting to take off. But you have Apple and I think the G4 Max were starting to come out or something like that.
Yeah, that's right.
And those big gray towers were coming out and stuff like that. And then the black MacBooks were out because I know one of my friends had the black MacBook, and we were big Apple fanboys and all of that. But it's kind of funny that I don't know why it never occurred to me. Like a computer was a big deal in my house, and I was a big computer nerd and liked a lot about it. But I remember going off to college. I don't think it even ever occurred to me to save enough to get a laptop. Where I was like, there's no way I could ever save $1,000. Like, $1,000 for an 18-year-old. I was like, I might be able to save like $200, but then I'm gonna like have to go buy some sunglasses or something like that. Like, my ability to save money back then was pretty minimal. It was bad at best. But since my best friend had a Mac laptop, I think I probably just leaned on him and I was like, eh, I'll use yours. But like, I didn't go to film school with a camcorder. I don't think I was, but that was one cool thing about that school is that you could, as a freshman, you could rent out a camera, and stuff like that. So we were getting our hands on like 16 millimeters. And then I did a work study program with the school where I worked in admissions and I would give kids tours of the school. And then some of those kids sometimes would stay the night in my room if they were doing an overnight tour and stuff like that. So then I had kids staying in my room all the time. But really, I was just using that money to like buy film to load
I
into the
can't.
16 millimeter.
$1,000. I That's unheard of. I don't think I spent that much on my computer. I
Oh,
mean,
really? Oh, yeah.
we had a family computer. I think a lot of families started to have theirs. So it was like a Packard Bell 486, I think, 16 megas of RAM or something like that.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
but and so like that's what I would be working with. But then when I actually went to school and got to build myself a 3D modeling computer with Photoshop on it, a cracked version of Photoshop at least.
Of
Um,
course.
I don't know. I don't think it was very expensive. I think maybe $300 or $400. Oh my gosh, that reminds me. There was this computer store that my friends would shop at. It was like not even a store. You had to call them and order the parts or something like that. So you had to know what you want, and then they would have it for you. It was like I remember walking in there, and there was like this really hot like Romanian girl working at the desk. She would go back and grab the parts from the warehouse, and it's like a processor, some RAM, a fan, a case, and it's like that's how we got our parts and we built it. I relied on my friends who knew how to do all of that stuff, and I just kind of asked them what to do. They told me what to get, and then I put it together. I don't know what my other friends did. I know that my roommates they were into Macs. I wasn't. I was a PC guy, but
Well, see,
yeah,
that's why you were saving so much money and not having to spend $1,000. Is that I was
right.
like, I was one of those idiot young kids back in the day that was like, if it's not a Mac, it sucks. And I'm not going to Windows, and Windows is dumb, and all of this.
Oh
And then I
yeah.
was like, yeah, but you're paying a premium to have this Mac. And I wish I would have realized a little bit sooner. It wasn't until I got into 3D that I started building my own PCs, where it's like, now I'll keep the Mac laptop, but my desktop is always a Windows machine. Like, and in my opinion, Apple's kind of left their pro customers in the dust a long time ago. Probably right about when I was in college was right around the time when they were still like a professional device and they were the fastest or could be the fastest and best out there with their next machine, but now they're just not anymore. And once I realized that, I was like, oh, okay, and this it's not as big of a battle as I thought that it was. I was like, I don't mind working in Windows. I also don't mind working in Mac. Either one is fine. I can do either one. It's no big deal. But yeah, there was no way I was going to buy anything that wasn't a Mac computer, and which was
Yeah.
just it was just
You know,
stupid.
a funny story that I used to, when I would go home every weekend, I would carry my computer home. So I
Wait, with
would
the
take,
monitor?
oh yeah, with the monitor. I would every weekend I would take my computer home with me, and so I would unplug everything, carry the case out, and I lived up like Pittsburgh's full of hills, and if you're on the sidewalk, you have to walk up some steps to get to another platform where you walk up more steps to get to your front door, and then we lived on the third floor, inside the steps. So I was carrying all these things down, going around, parking on the street. So I had to walk across the street up the hill to get to my car with my CRT monitor in my hand, and I'm putting it in the back seat of my car. Come back, go get my PC. Come back, go get like my mouse and my peripherals and my keyboard and stuff, and that we would take it home and we would set it up at my friend's house. He had it rigged for like PC gaming, so
Uh huh.
he had installed Ethernet ports all around the
Oh
house,
yeah.
and a big giant table. So we would all plug in and we'd play Unreal Tournament.
Oh
And
yeah.
so that was exciting back then. I mean, it's like, yeah, I'm taking my PC home. I mean, I could have done it with a laptop, but no,
Yeah,
no,
because you
you
have
got
to
all
play
that
Unreal.
giant ass. Yeah, you got to play Unreal, and you have to have the giant ass CRT monitor that weighs like 50 pounds.
Yeah, for us, we would go and rent, well, not rent out, we would just go check the media lab. So, like, basically, it was kind of like just a bunch of computers set up on desks that were for video editing and stuff like that. And they were probably teaching graphic design and stuff like that in there in the media lab. But on the weekends and stuff and out of class, surprisingly, there was barely anybody in there. And we'd go in there and play StarCraft. And that was a
Okay,
big
yeah.
thing for us because they were all linked together and we're like, all right, we got to go in and we're playing StarCraft together and all of that. And that was the best because that was the only like LAN setup on campus, and you couldn't do it between rooms and stuff like that. So unless we're playing like Dreamcast or something like that, we're up
Dreamcast.
in the media lab. Yeah, Dreamcast played so much of that system.
And Tony Hawk's Pro Skater on Dreamcast.
Oh yeah, yeah, that was good. Yeah, Power Stone. I had this game called Power Stone that we loved. That was a good one.
Wow.
Oh man, those were the good old days. Yeah, because then you evolved into Halo and stuff like that, and the Xbox parties, and
Oh
linking
yeah, yeah, yeah.
systems together and all of that. And it is funny looking back on all of that. I think it's great for to as far as the theme for our podcast too, because I remember a lot in college, and I think that was kind of my impetus to leave college is that I was like, I was barely working on stuff all the time. Like the longer that I was there, the more I didn't want to go to class. I didn't want to do this. And it's like, Zach, did you get your paper done? And I'm like, I'll get started on it's a 20-page paper and it's due tomorrow. And I'm like, oh, it's tomorrow? Oh, crap. And it's like, I'm just sitting there playing video games. I should really be working on other stuff. Or I really should have been like, trying to make more content or do all of this. But I was like, I was so fed up with their rules and their ideals of what they wanted filmmaking to be. And I just wanted to go mess around with my friends and things like that.
Hmm.
What was the change of process like for you, realizing that you didn't want to do 3D and then you wanted to do more graphic design?
Oh yeah. So graduating, I graduated at like the top three of my class. I did okay with the 3D. My demo reel looked pretty good. I had that CG breakdancer b-boy thing going on in the music video. But that music video that I did with more or less was a project I did with my friends who were not at that art school, but they were going to Case Western Reserve up in Cleveland. And so this my music that I was doing with the breakdancing and with this music video, like kind of Spike Jones inspired, that was felt more true to me than what my classmates were trying to do with the assignments. And like, so I felt like I wanted to move in this direction that felt more true to me. And so I kind of put that feather in my cap. I had the whole milkhead.com branding that as like a follower of my box of milk music was, we called it a Milkhead. So I just started to lean into that direction, right? And then right around that same time, I had discovered the sort of post-hardcore emo punk rock scene of music. When I worked at McDonald's, I had noticed that there was like a binder of CDs that someone had left in the back room. I don't know if it was a customer, but I was flipping through it and it was like a gold mine of like all of this music, like AFI, Blink 182, their whole discography, like all of these bands that I'd never really listened to, but I've always heard about them. So I was like, I took that whole thing home and I started downloading and ripping all the CDs, put them all the MP3s onto burn all these MP3 discs so I could listen to them. And so I got so obsessed with this music. I was really into it. It had bands like The Used and, these
Oh
screamo
yeah.
bands, Poison the Well, post-hardcore stuff. And then my girlfriend at the time was also into this kind of music. So I was like, this is cool. And then my music that I was making started to take that direction. But there was a magazine that they had that covered this music called Alternative Press, AP Magazine. I don't know if you've
Oh
ever heard
yeah,
of it.
yeah. Okay, yeah. Hmm.
Okay, and they're based out of Cleveland. And so I would get AP Magazine at the bookstore, like at Barnes and Noble. I'd be like always looking through it. I was like, "Oh, look, they're covering Under Oath this month. Oh, here's the Used on the cover. Cool, Fallout Boy, awesome." So I was getting really into these bands, and when I would get these magazines, I would see it was covered with artwork, like the T-shirt designs and the album covers that these artists or that these bands used for their cover art and their merch was really appealing to me. And I saw one of these artists who had a really strong figure drawing skill with this like loose kind of sketchy drawing, and his name was Derek Hess. And Derek Hess is a Cleveland-based artist that had done a bunch of gig posters for the hardcore scene in the late '90s and the early 2000s. He started doing the post-hardcore stuff, and so these concert posters I started to see, and I was getting really inspired by how they looked, and I was like, I want to be like him. I want to be just like Derek Hess. So I wanted to do gig posters. And so when I would look up Derek Hess online, there was a website called gigposters.com, and that featured poster art from all over the world. And I got to see not only his work, but the work of others, like artist names like Justin Kimmer or Angry Blue, or Rob Doby was another big inspiration for me at the time. And these guys, I was like, had a name for themselves. They were doing their work on their own terms. They were creating this kick-ass art for these bands that kind of developed the visual language for this music that I was into. And I was like, I just want to do that. That is so much more true to me. It felt deeper in my body than doing any of the CG animation. And combined with that phone call I got that I mentioned in the last episode where the guy's like, 3D Studio Max? Yeah, that's your future. Fuck your
Yeah.
future if you want to learn 3D Studio Max. I was like, you know what? Fuck you. I'm going to go do this with the music that I like, these artists, and I would connect with them on AOL Instant Messenger. And we were talking, and there's an online community around it, and I just was like, I'm going to do that. So I started drawing in Photoshop, doing some mock-up gig posters, and that's where it started, trying to emulate that grunge style of like the early 2000s, Photoshop brushes, getting into that, getting into just that gritty aesthetic. I think there was the Bauda Design Lab, I think was a popular company at the time who did a lot of the layouts for these bands. So yeah, that's where I was like, I'm headed that direction. Screw
I,
this CG animation corporate world.
did you ever get to do any work with bands on posters and stuff like that? Like, were you able to make that a reality pretty quickly, or where did it go from there?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a website, DeviantArt was really popular at the time, and I at Gig Posters, I put some stuff up there. There was absolutepunk.net, which was a punk news blog that was where you would go to find news about Fall Out Boy and any of these bands. And so they had a forum, and I posted on that forum a lot. But I did get some work. So what was it, 2004? It was when I graduated high school or college, and then I quit McDonald's in the fall of 2004. I don't remember exactly when I first started, but basically 2005 is when I said, I'm freelancing. I'm not going to get a real job. I'm going to find some clients. And then I got a couple clients, probably off DeviantArt or MySpace or something, one of these like forums or whatever. And I would be charging like $50, $25, doing some free work. Eventually I got the attention of
Did
a
you just
record
say you were
label.
charging $25 for free work?
$25 or doing some free work,
Oh,
whatever.
or
I
doing
don't.
some free work. I was like, charging $25 for free work. Man, that's some expensive free work.
No, I did do some bands. So some bands, local. I don't even remember who my first band client was, to be honest. But also independent clothing companies were starting to pop up that were like inspired by this punk rock music scene. So I think like a brand name called Unspoken Clothing hired me, and I sucked at doing this stuff, but I was like trying to figure it out on the fly. Actually, Derek Hess had a clothing brand called Stress, which was spelled Strhess. had his last name in it.
Oh,
And
gotcha. Yeah, yeah.
and I had contacted them and says, "Hey, I'm looking to do t-shirt designs. I'm just getting started." So his manager like sent me some work, and I tried to do some shirts with using his art, and you kind of like complement it with some textures and graphics. And I did okay. I don't think I did a very good job. I'm learning, still learning Photoshop. I don't really know how to
Sure.
use the vector pen tools and Illustrator, and I can't believe I got work. I mean, I'm getting work even though I'm not that great. But I think my drawing portfolio from my college years was really good, and people were like, "Cool, I want like stuff like that." So I was getting people. I think it was a DeviantArt. It was other people my age in similar cohort that were finding me online.
Yeah. So
Eventually, things started to take off.
I found DeviantArt pretty late. Were you just posting on there like, "Hey, I'm available to work"? Was it kind of like a little bit of a cold call, or were people seeing your portfolio up there and saying, "Hey, I'll give you 20 bucks for this," or was it a little bit of both? I mean, do you think you were reaching out to a lot of people looking for work, or were
Yeah, I
people
was.
reaching out to
I
you?
reached out to. I remember reaching out to Rob Doby when before I even got started, basically asking him how he got started. We were chat over AIM. Um, there was a Yeah, I think I reached out to a lot of people because they had their AOL Instant Messenger handles like there, and you could talk to them. And so I would be talking to people who were also doing work. I really tried to connect with a lot of other artists. That's I got in touch with Justin over at Angry Blue, and since I liked his site, there was a thing that we would do called well, affiliate linking. You know, it wasn't really affiliate programs as they were today, but back then it was like you had a list of other sites that were similar to yours or your friends, and you would link like kind of like a web ring.
Oh, that's kind of
So
cool.
we would have little 88 by 31 buttons that we would put on our website that advertise their site. So it's kind of like you go to someone's site and you kind of see who their friends are at the bottom of the page, you know, all their little logos of like others similar. And so I would reach out to all those people being like, "Man, I really love your work. This is so cool. You want to trade links?" So I would put their button on my site and they would put mine on theirs. And so I think through that I started to build this network. Um, yeah, it was just actual networking and connecting with other artists and bands. And I would go up to bands at shows saying like, "Hey, I do t-shirt design. Can I do some stuff for you?" And then I would get work by doing that. And at that point it was, I don't know how I had the gumption to go up to bands after their show and promote myself a lot more than I do today. I just was,
Yeah. No, well, and I think that that's the impressive thing or the interesting thing about that because for me, connecting creatives to work is some of the most fascinating part of the business. And even for us right now, and some of the impetus for this podcast of we should be working, it's also some of the most undesirable part of the job of like, man, getting work that I like and enjoy is turned into such a grind now that you're right. It's like I can't just go to, a smaller little venue for some new up and coming band. Or I mean, I could, but I'm really not going to make any money. And the level of effort that I'm putting in to design this band a t-shirt, it's not really worth it. They're going to give me maybe like 50 bucks, 100 bucks or something. And I'm
mhm.
putting way more time and effort in because now I've got 15, 20 years of experience behind me to make this artwork and it's severely undervalued then.
Yeah. And there's
But
been hundreds of people that have come after you that are doing it better and faster and cheaper. And they're just, you're just not as interesting anymore. You're just old news.
yeah, well, I wouldn't even say that as much as maybe like at least I wouldn't say for you. I still think that your art and your perspective is still very valued and in some way even more so because I don't see many shops doing it as well anymore. As well as you guys were doing it back in the day, that kind of grunge style, that was really inspiring to me as well. But I think the weird thing or some of the difference for me was I had such a hard time in the video industry understanding how do I get from here? I'm a student, I have a camera or I have an idea and I want to make this. How do I get somebody to pay me to do this? How do I go? Like, I would watch these music videos and be like, man, I'd love to do a music video. I can't get a hold of Spike Jones. I can't get a hold of these guys that are making all of these music videos. Like, I can't just look them up and be like,
Mhm.
hey, man, how's it going? Like, there was such a disconnect there that I remember the closest that we got was my buddy had written a script there was a band that we were big into back in the 90s, Garbage.
Hmm.
And speaking of AP Press, I think that they were on the cover one time. And we were big into Garbage, and he had written a treatment for a music video for them for one of their songs and all of that. And then, sure enough, after we went to one of their shows, and after the show, got to meet the band and all that, and he was like, we were talking with this dude who's the bass player, who's technically not even in the band. Garbage has a lead singer, two lead guitar players, and a drummer. They don't. Their bass player is not a part of the band. Just records and goes on tour with them, but is technically not
Yeah,
in the band. I always thought that that was so weird
that's
and
weird.
funny of them that they brought
Yeah.
this guy along for years and years and years to record. But we're like, we're not going to invite you in the band. But so like we meet this dude afterwards, like, hey, it's so important. Can you give this script to the rest of the band? We'd love to make this video for you guys. It's like that was how we thought we were going to make it and start making music videos, is that we had to start pitching these bands ideas and stuff like that. But then the other thing was is that unfortunately a lot of the music that we were into was kind of more mainstream music as well. And
Hmm.
so that idea probably would have worked if it was more smaller local up and coming bands, that it's like, hey, go to the local like shows and that are doing like 45 minutes and stuff like that. And those guys would probably be like, yeah, man, we'd love for you to make us a music video. We don't have a lot of money. And we're like, we don't care. We're just young and hungry and we want to go make music videos.
Exactly.
So trying to connect those two worlds for me. But then I also got to the point where, for you at least, like you started reaching out to artists and all of that. I don't know why. And it sounds so dumb to say now, but I remember being a kid and almost being intimidated to ask people. It almost like never even occurred to me to ask people that I did know, to be like, how do I get to do this job? How do I get there? Can you give me some advice? Like, I want to do this. Where do I go? How
Hmm.
do I do it? I think I was so intimidated by them that I didn't want them to think that I was like bothering them or leave me alone or all of this. And that I was like, if I just keep working with them long enough, it'll just happen. I think is how I thought that it would go. Like, all right, well, I'm working in the movie business, so any day now I'll be making movies. And it just, it never really connected that way. So the fact that you reached out and started asking, to me, as weird as it sounds, is pretty genius. That I was like, it was so weird to me to do that. So that you saw a path there, because for me, I didn't see a path. I thought I like filled out a job application and then somebody would hire me. That's how young and naive and dumb I was. I was like, I don't know. How do you get a direct Star Wars? Like, I don't know how you do that.
Right.
It
Yeah.
was a weird, it was a weird thing. So as you're starting to make more of all of this, where is that taking you? Are you starting to make any money, or are you going, man, I could make money at this? Or is it just more the passion that you're like, I can't believe I'm getting to make band posters and band t-shirts and stuff like this?
Yeah. It was both, because I was so excited that I got to do this stuff and I was getting paid for it. Um, I had to find my own clients. I didn't work for anybody who was giving me clients on the regular. So it was like kind of stressful that, like, okay, yeah, this $50 t-shirt design is going to help me this week, but like, what about next week? You know, I did get a few like longer term clients. There was a record label that found me called Corporate Punishment Records. They were like a band that had metal artists like Meshuggah, or I can't even really remember some of them,
Oh,
but
wow.
some of them
Okay. Yeah.
eclipsed into sort of the mainstream. They had tangential connections to like Slipknot and bands like that, and like Roadrunner Records, but they were like an offshoot from people who used to work for them. I don't know. So the guy running it, he hired me as to do his website and do a bunch of stuff for his artists, but it was kind of like free if I can promote myself on the materials. So I would do an ad layout for them, and then I would put like art designed by Milkhead on the bottom of it, or I would do a t-shirt design and they would promote me on their website. So it was kind of like pro bono, free spec work. Um, and then that led to more things down the line. And it was funny because they had connections. They were a little bit higher level than I did. So they worked with a music video guy named, oh, I can't remember it now, but he did music videos for these artists, these metal bands. And so they needed a place to shoot a video. And I offered up my family's house. We lived on this like giant property that had like in the countryside, basically on top of a hill. And they came over and shot this video over at my parents' property. And like, that was a really cool experience. But like, that guy was also like kind of a DIY. He had a camera high quality camera, and he was shooting videos for these bands. There's another music video director named Darren Doan at the time. He had a DVD called like The Shape of Videos to Come, the videos of Darren Doan, and it was like punk rock. It was like a punk rock mixtape, but his music videos. So you can imagine how like once you start doing a few bands, it's like people start to recognize you as like the band music video guy, and you're especially if you're
Yeah.
helping them out and you're cheap. And there was a lot of other kids too, my age, who were trying to get into music videos and trying to do the same work for these pop punk bands. And so they would just contact them, put it out there, offer to do it for free, and then of course the video is like on absolutepunk.net. They're getting and he's getting all sorts of publicity for doing the video, even if he didn't even get paid. But that's how we did it at that point. I just don't know if it works the same today in this day and age. It just doesn't seem.
I'm not sure it
I don't
does. I
know.
feel like
I think it
with
was
the,
so novel at that point. This is
yeah.
before MySpace.
Yeah, I think before MySpace and now that you've got YouTube and all of this, that it's like it's turned much more into you just go make it yourself as opposed to even asking other people and things like that. And then you get big
Yeah.
enough. That's pretty fascinating though, that then you get into it that way. That's because that's a pretty big deal then as well. But what were you getting by with for work? Were you making enough money for an apartment and stuff like that? Doing,
Yeah.
I mean, was it websites, graphic design, video? Was it just the gamut? Like, hey, give me anything and I'll do it.
So yeah, it was websites, logos, gig posters, T-shirt designs, album covers. Yeah, that's pretty much all I did. I didn't do video. I,
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
I really didn't do video. I had some video skills, but not enough to please any of these folks. But
You had a property that was great for video. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, my parents just lived in the country, and I was like, "Hey, you could shoot it there." And they're like, "Okay, for free." Yeah, my dad will love it. Like he was all into it. Like they loved it, but we didn't get paid for that.
Well, and
There
tell
was
me,
so
go ahead. Yeah, no,
well,
go ahead.
I made about $18,000 my first year freelancing, and so that was enough to afford a really crappy apartment with my girlfriend at the time. So we split it. But I remember when we moved in, I was like just getting started, and I said I wrote this letter to the apartment complex, being like, "Hey, I'm just getting started with my business. I just got out of art school. I've been working on this. I'm freelancing. I'm trying to make, it was kind of like a begging feel for like, please let me live here." And of course, they approved us, but I had no idea if it was because of my letter, because I didn't have the proof of income to show them. And I didn't have a full-time job to
Yeah.
say, here's my pay stub. So I was really scared that I wouldn't be able to get this apartment. So I wrote this letter, they gave us the apartment, and then I managed to make it every month. I did also launch my own merch line called Milkhead Merch, where I just had my own t-shirts and t-shirts and stickers and stuff. And I've sold a few of those, not really enough to make a living at all, but enough to catch the attention and to promote myself. And I just made enough every month to get by. And it wasn't, I guess I did that for a year. Well, I got to remember, I got to tell you. So this is where Go Media comes in, because when I was living there up near Cleveland, I had went to a Derek Hess art show to network, not even to network. He was my favorite artist. I wanted to go see his work in person. So, my girlfriend and I drove up to Cleveland, and we saw his work, and I got to see him in person. I met his manager. You know, that's when I got that Stress Clothing job. When I asked him, I introduced myself, gave him like my business card and everything. So I'm trying to meet. And little did I know, inside that crowd there was like all of these artists from Cleveland that I would eventually get to know, that were hanging out in sort of the Cleveland punk post-hardcore scene. I kind of still felt like it's a bit too cool for me, but like that's where they were hanging out at this gallery. And then I saw in like this rack of flyers, where there's like flyers for all sorts of cool stuff, and one of them was for Go Media, and I picked it up and I was looking at it and I was like, that's cool, that's really cool. So I took all the ones that inspired me home, and I ended up putting it on my wall. It's like I decorated my wall with like, posters and stuff that I do, in my bedroom, and the Go Media flyer was on there. And I remember emailing them, telling them that their work was really cool, and I wonder if they're hiring, because they look like a big company, like not a big company, but like,
Sure.
Go Media. It's not just
Yeah,
a
exactly.
freelancer. So, and then I contacted them, and they wrote me back and were really impressed with my work. And so we had an interview, and basically they let me know that they couldn't afford to hire me at that time. They wanted to pay me $10 an hour. And I was like, I need to pay for this apartment. I can't really do that. I got to move to pay for this apartment.
Yeah.
So, okay, well, we'll give you in touch. Maybe if we got some work, we'll still throw some freelance stuff your way. So that's when I said, okay, I'm going to do my Milkhead stuff full time now. And so I spent a year doing that and trying to make my money. And I made $18,000 my first year. And it was after that, Go Media made me the offer of bringing me on as a partner, part owner. And they were really impressed with how I promoted myself, how I stayed in business for a year, how I just, my whole level of growth from that time
I
over that
bet.
year. So that's what led to the Go Media job that ended up taking up the next 9 years of my life. So
No, that's great. And maybe next week we'll get to that a little bit or here in the future. Before
yeah.
we do, and as we wrap stuff up, where did Milkhead come from? What
So
was Milkhead?
so Milkhead, when I first started making music, this was my first semester in college, second semester. I was still living in the very first apartment complex, the student housing thing I told you about earlier. Anyway, I downloaded a program on my computer called Drums. It was like a drum editor thing. I always kind of always wanted to play, so I was like tinkering around with this like drum program, made some music, some drum tribally stuff. It was kind of ridiculous, and I sent it to my friends. They're like, "Well, this is so cool," so I kept making songs out of this. And then I was like, "Well, I need an artist name. What should I call myself?" And my friend Dan, he said, "Call yourself Box O Milk with a Y." And I said, "All right, whatever." Like I didn't care,
Where
so
does the
I just
Y
said,
go?
"I don't know." He just because to make it different. I don't know. Milk,
Yeah,
MYLK.
MYLK. Yeah.
Right, right. So I was like, all right. So I put Box of Milk on the stuff that I made, and then they would ask me, when's the next Box of Milk song coming out, Jeff? And I'm like, all right, well, I got another one coming, you know. And then I started learning FL Studio. I downloaded that like my second year in college. I think it was Fruity Loops version 3. Um, and so I'm like blown away. I'm making beats. I'm like trying to make stuff that sounds good. I'm like making techno songs, and then I'm bringing it home to these LAN parties that we would go to. Remember, I would bring my PC
Yeah.
home. Well, those kids who were IT majors, he had the LAN area that he built in his basement, and he also had a dance studio that he put up like a light because he would host parties there. So he had this like big flashing like disco light thing. He had a PC that he set up that was hooked to a sound system that he engineered, and so he had a whole list of like iTunes, I think. So you can drag all of your MP3s and you would play it and it would sound really good. So we'd be like, let's play your music on these speakers. So we would play them, we would dance to them. And a friend of mine showed me the 6-step. I was like, oh shit, how do you do that? It was like this breakdance move. And I'm like, teach me how to do that. And that was the day that I got hooked on breakdancing. And so this idea of like taking my songs to this party every weekend and showing them my new stuff and then all just kind of nerding out and dancing, that was this, it's like, it inspired that music video that I told you about, the Milkhead
Hmm.
music video. And so the idea of Milkhead was somebody who was like a fan of Box of Milk, because I
Oh,
was also
great.
into the film Eraserhead
Uh-huh.
by
Oh
David
yeah,
Lynch.
yeah.
So because I kind of identified with Eraserhead for some reason, as like my friends thought of me as like that guy who's into weird obscure films. So they'd be like, "Hey, Finney is what they called me. They're like,
Hmm.
Finney, what weird movies are you into?" And I would always have something, to show them. And we played Eraserhead, and there was always like, "Well, this movie's so fucked up, it's so weird."
Yeah.
So Eraserhead with a box of milk, Milkhead, and then that became my brand name for my freelance business, milkhead.com, and that's the story of that.
So when you did milkhead.com, did you keep the Y in there or did you switch to an
Yeah,
I? Yeah,
no, I
nice.
definitely kept the Y in there. Yeah, and I had some like image of a stock image that I found of a cat that was like soaked in milk, like a kitten, like it just was in a bowl of milk, and the
Uh-huh.
kitten was all wet, and it looked weird, and I like cropped it out, and I like put some grunge filters on it, and I like cut it out as my logo, stuck it next to Milkhead, and then this like wet cat icon was like synonymous with Milkhead. It wasn't. It was just a stock photo that I found on Getty Images, I think. I don't know, but that became like my logo was this wet cat.
Yeah. That is
Weird.
freaking hilarious. That is great. I love the milkheads. Yeah, all the milkheads out there. I'm a milkhead
Yeah,
for box milk.
it was just some fantasy that I made up. I
So
mean, like
great.
we joked about it. Like I don't think they really existed, but for that music video, that was my final project. I decided to put that idea to life. So I took the breakdancing element and then I cut these milk jugs and made masks out of them. So people had this like black hoodie with this like upside down milk jug mask, and there were these goons that like chased around this guy. And then at the end they like gave them a mask, and then he like became one of them, and then they all started dancing. It's like they're all breakdancing, and it was like some ridiculous
So
thing. And
great.
and I showed that to my class at my final project, and they were like highly entertained by this. It was like so weird. I just felt like it was something special.
Yeah, that weird, obscure stuff from the art school classes. Yeah, when you're doing like portfolio reviews or project reviews and all that. Yeah, that sounds awesome. So as we kind of wrap things up here, what is inspiring you right now? So speaking of back in the Milkhead days, you got that, you got your grunge music, you're making t-shirts, making posters. What's inspiring for you right now? You got anything, any movies you're watching, any shows, any artists?
Well, the things that are inspiring me right now are not art and not really music. But I'm reading a book called The Authenticity Industries by Michael Serrazio. I actually just finished his book called The Power of Sports, Media and Spectacle in American Culture. It's just like a critical look at media and the spectacle around it, and sports as like a religion and the values that it proposes, and we're all kind of sucked into it. So like the psychology of it, and I like listening to it as like this critical lens. So this authenticity industry is fascinating because I've been somebody that's really been into the idea of authenticity as long as I can remember. That's what got me into films like Werner Herzog or Harmony Korine, or these filmmakers that had a more cinema verite style, because it felt authentic to me. And
Hmm.
nowadays, it's kind of like they talk about how authenticity is like this modern day moral framework that we all kind of live in, especially with social media. And are people being authentic? Like, what does that even really mean? And also, authentic is also like organic foods, or like the buy local phenomenon, and how it intertwines and mixes with capitalism. And it's like authenticity isn't really authentic because everything's a performance. And it's just a really amazing, nuanced look at the world of authenticity. And I'm kind of questioning my own interest in it, because I think because I'm so obsessed with authenticity, it makes it hard for me to go out and get a job, because I have to put on a performative identity that doesn't feel like me. And so because of that resistance I have, I feel like I can't function in society, because the way I am, I have to be authentic, which is an interesting thing, because I don't know if in cultures prior they actually felt like that. Like, you go to work, you get a job. They don't care so much about authenticity. But today, millennials especially do. So I'm just interested, like, where did that come from? Why are we like that? And
Well, and it's almost like
yeah.
another to your point as far as saying how much did that exist before is I'm sure to a certain extent that it did, and maybe even
Hmm.
more so in even Eastern cultures and all of that, as far as like, oh, you're passing down the brush making business throughout the family and all of that. And we make the calligraphy brushes for the royal family, and we've been doing it for generations. Like this is authentic. But as you ask that next layer of, well, what does that even mean? Am I still who I am? And as you break down to like, here's what's authentic, but then is this really authentic? Because am I just putting on a show for all of this to put that out there? I still don't really feel like myself, but I've inherited this business. I'm not doing what I want to do. How much
Hmm.
questioning you're putting into all of that? Because, yeah, I mean, just for us talking about getting jobs and all that is, I think in today's day and age, there is that other layer of, before we were taught to go out and grind, grind, grind. And if you're working, you're doing good, you're a good person, you're doing all this, but you don't feel like you're being yourself. You don't feel like you're being authentic. And then how can you find a job that is somebody else is asking this of you, and that's not necessarily 100% of who you are? How do you get to be who you are at your work all the time? And, as things tend to grow, you do this, and businesses and companies, corporations, and because of capitalism, now this thing that you started off that was authentic has become inauthentic as
Hmm.
it goes on. And why are you even perpetuating any of it? It's really, really fascinating to me. And I loved what you just said about the thought of sports as a religion. Oh my gosh, I've never even really thought about it that way too much. It's like that would
Hmm.
be a fun rabbit hole to get down. Because
Yeah.
are you much of a sports fan at all? Are you a Browns
Oh
fan?
yeah. I'm definitely a sports fan. I've been a Browns fan my whole life.
I'm sorry.
Through thick and thin. And they
Yeah,
talk about that in the book. Like, why are fans like that? Why
yeah.
why do they care if it's a product? Why are that continually upsets you and makes you angry and hurts you so badly? Why are you still going back? It's like an abusive relationship where like you're investing all this energy and they're not giving you anything that you want except for they keep promising it, but they never really deliver. But you keep going back and you keep dedicating more time and more money and more energy, and sports as a religion, it's kind of like, it's not really a religion in the same way, but it's kind of an unspoken baseline secular way of life that we all agree upon. That it's one of the few places where people can kind of come together and put their differences aside for a moment and just enjoy and kind of root for the same team and feel like they're part of something. Like, you see a fellow person wearing your team's gear on the street and you're like, hey, we're bonded by something,
Instant
even though
camaraderie.
you don't really know them. So it's kind of this weird cultural signifier that brings people together in a weird abstract way, but it's all a commercial product, and it always and it has been. Like I just watched the NBA All-Star game a week or two ago, and it was like the worst All-Star game of all time. I mean, it's an utter joke. It's like a complete.
Yeah.
It's gone over to the point of it's past athletics, and now it's too much on the spectacle side, where they have to kind of razz it up a bit more, and with media and spectacle and lights. And the athletes don't even really care about winning. They're not even trying. And it's so funny because there's a video online. I saw the 1987 All-Star game was posted. It's like the full version of it. So I watched some of that and compared it to the modern day All-Star game, and like, oh my gosh, just the way that they talk about the players, the way that they felt like there was real stakes at it's the best 26 basketball players in the world. There was Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Magic Johnson, Michael Jordan, Larry Bird, all playing against each other, and it was like everybody was there. Like, this is some real thing. Nowadays, it's kind of like a bunch of social media celebrities kind of jacking up threes. They shot
Yeah.
168 threes in this All-Star game, whereas in like 1987, I think they shot like 14 or something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's like,
Just
what is the
unbelievable.
state? So yeah,
Well,
you're
and
in sports, right? So
yeah.
you have you're involved in it. And Kara and I love to watch women's basketball. We're like obsessed with women's college basketball. We watch games every week. So
That's great. Well, and I think the other thing, as far as sports being a religion, is that like you said, why are you watching it? It doesn't make sense. But then you're also evangelizing other people to join it. Like, you're telling your kids, oh, this is our team. Like, there's generations that get the team handed down to them. Or, if a friend doesn't know anything about it, like I remember, I got into hockey when I was younger, and there was not a hockey team here in Colorado. And so me and one of my buddies just kind of latched onto the Pittsburgh Penguins because they were the best team at the time when we were playing. And we're like, oh, Mary Lemieux, and we're playing on our
oh
Sega.
yeah,
We're
Mary
playing
Lemieux.
NHL on Sega, and like Lemieux
Yeah.
just felt like a cheat code when you're playing that game. You could just wrap around and shoot the puck in every single time. And so I became a Penguins fan. Well, then, even when the Colorado Avalanche came to town, I'm still a Penguins fan. I don't hate the Avalanche. I like them. I think that they're a good team, but I'm like, I have to stick with the Penguins. I've got to stick with the Penguins. So it's like I've been indoctrinated into the Penguins religion kind of a thing, and I will stand by them through thick and thin and
Hmm.
through all of that, all because they just happened to be the best team when I was a very easily influenced young youth, and all of that. And I will stand by that, is that's an okay way to go for the rest of my life as well. But it's a weird
Yeah.
thing that you bring other people in, and you're going to fight other religions as well. Like, if you like that team, oh, you're the enemy. You don't believe with what we do. We're the right way, and we'll sit and argue about it. It's a really fascinating analogy there, of what that
Yeah.
is.
Yeah, I became a Browns fan because I was born into a family of Browns fans, and
Yeah.
sitting around watching it and rooting for it. I mean, I would literally cry when they would lose, and I would pray to God, and God wouldn't answer my prayers. So I'm like questioning God. It's like
Yeah.
it was
Yeah. Because the
ridiculous. I mean,
Browns
as
are
a young
elite.
kid, developing this sense of like moral scrupulosity or OCD around like praying and superstition and Browns and sports. I mean, they would always lose. They would always break your heart, and they still do to this day. And it's like, why do I keep watching? I mean, I felt the same way with the Cleveland Cavaliers. I was always a Cavs fan growing up, and I lived like 20 minutes away from where LeBron James went to high school. So he was like a big superstar in high school. And I remember when he was drafted by the Cavs, it was like a dream come true.
Yeah.
And I went to go see Cleveland Cavaliers practice at Kent State University when he was drafted, and I got to like look at him in person as like this figure of light or whatever. I don't even know
Uh-huh.
what, but he was like this hero. And so then they took us to the finals and all of that stuff, but we still lost, and it was stressful watching that. But anyway, I remember falling out of fandom, and I moved away to Austin and stopped watching Cleveland sports. And that year that I moved away to Austin, Cleveland Cavaliers win the title, they win the NBA title. I didn't watch a single game. I was like,
Oh,
fuck that
didn't get
shit.
to
Why,
enjoy it.
why,
Yeah.
why? I didn't get to watch it and enjoy the big moment that everybody had been praying for, because Cleveland had been starved for a championship from all their sports teams.
Yeah.
So this was the first time in a while, and I was not even in the city to enjoy it. I was like, so then I built in this like idea: if I stop paying attention, then they do good. So maybe I'll just not
Yeah. I'll
watch.
just ignore it.
Why am I
Yeah.
doing that?
It's the weirdest. It's the weirdest thing for all of that. Well, as we wrap things up, I'll tell a little story that you made me think about that you were saying earlier, carrying your CRT around.
Oh yeah.
Instead of working at a job one time, one of my first jobs out of school, I was interning at a TV station here in Colorado that was owned by Mark Cuban.
Oh, okay.
It was one of the few things that he did that not many people know about. But he started a TV channel, and it was the first all HD channel in the nation. So as they're switching over from SD over to HD, this was the first one that was running high definition only. Sometimes they would, it's kind of weird, they would switch like this program is in HD and then it would switch back to SD and all of that. And this is around 2002. I had bought an iMac and I would carry I was just an intern and I didn't need a computer. Most time I was just logging footage, or sitting in an edit bay with a producer working on a spot or something like that. So I didn't have a computer. So in between, I was just like, well, I'll bring my own computer in. So I would carry my iMac in and out of work, like the original iMacs
Oh
that
my
were just
God.
like the big CRT monitor. I was treating it like a portable computer, and it had a handle on the top. So I was like,
That's
everybody's
right.
like, why are
It
you
did.
carrying this thing around? I'm like, it has a handle. It's portable.
That's
And I
what it's
would,
for.
yeah, I would carry it around everywhere, in and out. And back in the day, speaking of like MP3s and all of that, I remember I was at work one time and I was downloading, MP3s off LimeWire and stuff like that. And I'm sitting at work and I'm just, I think I'm working on some script or something like that and going or emailing some buddies, listening to MP3s and all of that, and not really working. I should have been working. My main job there was to log footage. I think I logged like 2 hours of sports the entire like time that I did not I just tried to find other more fun stuff to do. And all of a sudden I'm sitting in this room all by myself across, like they had the main studio and then they had a little bit of an office building and barely anybody was in the office building. And this guy comes running in, his name's Glenn, and he goes, is your computer on? And I was like, yeah. And he goes, unplug that thing right now. And I was like, okay. And I'm like, he's like, no, 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 and yanks the plug out of the wall. And I'm like, what's going on? He goes, you're getting us hacked. And I was like, what do you mean? And he goes, you have no idea how much stuff I'm getting blown up with right now because of your dumb computer. And it was all because I had LimeWire
Oh
on it.
my God.
And I'm plugged in
Oh
and the whole
shit.
network's getting hacked and all of this. And so this is like 2002 before we even really knew what hacking
Oh
was
no.
or how it worked. And so like he's like trying to throw up firewalls. It felt like that movie Hackers, I'm sure, to me at the time, where he's like, I'm throwing up firewalls left and right. We're getting Trojan horses, and all because of my dumb LimeWire iMac that I had to be in. And if I would have been working, I almost got fired for that one too. That they're like, you and that dumb computer that you bring in all the time. And I was like, oh, sorry,
Oh my God.
sorry.
So I would be mortified. I would be
Yeah,
like, holy
I was
shit, I'm
terrified.
sorry. You're like,
I didn't know what to do. Like I was just so terrified that I was like, I almost was the downfall of this entire TV station, and all of that. Like I don't know what they could have done or what they were trying to do, but the TV station almost got hacked because of my
so you
dumb
didn't get
LimeWire.
fired?
Did not get fired. I
Got,
should have gotten fired
got to
from that
keep the
job
job.
multiple times. Like I loved that job, but I was kind of like, it was things like that where it was just kind of like you're a little bit of a fuck up. Like you just didn't think like, when you're
Uh,
like 19 years old, I didn't know that LimeWire plugging it into the network would get them hacked. Like, I didn't know that. Nobody told me. Like, you're just kind of young and computers are still kind of a new thing to you and how that even
but
works.
were they mad at you for downloading shit off their Wi-Fi, like, or
No,
off
they
their
weren't mad at
internet? Not
that. They
Wi-Fi.
were just mad that they were getting
Oh,
hacked.
okay.
So, and honestly, I don't know if they realized. I think he knew that it was LimeWire because I think he said he was running around everywhere trying to shut stuff down, and it was still there. And so he's going around the studio where pretty much everybody is. Like I said, that's where most people worked. Nobody wanted to be in the office building, and I just happened to be in the office building that day. And then he realized it clicked. He's like, Zach's over there with his dumb iMac, and then goes running over and was like, unplug that stupid thing. And then sure enough, like, because I was like, I don't know if it's because of me. Like, I'm just working on this thing. I'm just typing a script out. And I'm like, oh, crap, I have LimeWire up and all of that. And I was like, I was getting us hacked.
Bad news, Zach. Well, it
Yeah,
seems like it
exactly.
worked out for you in the long run. So
Exactly. It was fun. And
that's funny.
so, yeah, that's it for us this week, everybody. Jeff, great to see you. And we will chat next week on We Should Be Working. See you,
Bye,
everybody.
everybody.
That's stupid. I'm not doing that.